Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And incredibly, this is number 50 of Sounding the Shallows.
It is. And of course, 50 is a big celebration.
Well, it was
number.
For us last year, wasn't it?
It certainly was. And it will be for some people sitting on a beach in Portugal, I think, a big celebration. And we had, as part of an email somebody sent us just today, actually, saying, keep safe and smiling. Normality beckons. And I thought, I like that. It's what I want. And then I thought, is that actually what I feel?
Well, yes, it's an interesting question. I have a great jumble of feelings because, I mean, this is called Sounding the Shallows, and I think when we started this set of recordings 50 weeks ago,
50 weeks.
We thought this is about testing out, finding places to land. You test the depth of the water, and then eventually you land, and the land is firm and solid, and there you are, you're home. And now, I don't know, I suppose the experience of the last more than a year has sown some quite significant seeds of mistrust in easy safety.
In easy safety. And that's not all bad, is it?
No, not at all.
Because certainly for me, I think, terrible diseases happened elsewhere. Our connections with World Vision and Toy Box, you saw malaria, Ebola, you saw these dreadful things that wiped out communities, but they didn't happen here. And I know we've said it before, but I think as we do get to this point, there is a knowledge it can happen again. And certainly just at the moment with this Indian variant, there is that feeling that yes, the vaccine is holding us safe. Like a rope really holding on to us, keeping us safe. But is it strong enough? Is it going to keep us safe? And I think there is a fragility and maybe even an understanding as to how precious life is, which maybe we haven't ever had to really question before. I don't know.
Well, people have questioned it, but I think because of the way life moves along, it is possible to shelve death. And to not make it into a priority, but we all know it's waiting at the back of the queue, don't we, for us. But yeah, I think referring back to the time when we talked about the past catching up with you.
Oh, because there's so much more time, you mean? Because
we're not moving forward.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's like something crunching into you from behind, and you look at the past, and I must say, something that hasn't been a particular problem for me. I've got quite confused recently looking at the foundations of what not actually what I believe in terms of faith, but my life, me.
What priorities do you mean that you've had?
I can't really say. I think perhaps it's because I've grown up a bit over the years. And when I look back at the
some people would say you have still got certain aspects to your humour.
I'm more than aware of that. That's what I'm saying.
It's good.
That I look at the foundations of who I am, and I think actually they're not very sound. And then I ask myself, but actually, does that matter? Is it worth exploring that, or is it better left? Because we can't actually change foundations, can we? Or can we? I don't know.
This is tricky, isn't it, really? I mean, certainly we've had something shaken, and obviously we keep saying we've talked about this before, but we have been doing this for 50 weeks and 63 recordings earlier than that. But, that foundation that things would be organised by God in order that we didn't have to go through quite such dreadful things as maybe other people maybe has been shaken. And of course our present situation is an interesting one. Now I don't know if this counts as a parable.
You're talking about our dog.
But we have a dog with a bucket on her head. I mean, we mentioned last week that she'd had an operation, I can
Just
tell
say
you
she's not
exactly.
a clown dog, is she? She's not balancing a bucket on her
No,
head.
no, I wish she was. That would make life much easier, Adrian. We could throw balls
Yes,
into it and
good,
keep her
yeah.
very happy. No, she's no. I mean, we all know these awful collars that you see poor dogs with that bewildered expression. You've often felt that, particularly, haven't you, about male dogs who've had to.
Yes, male dogs have been castrated and had a bucket put on their heads and are looking round thinking, what can I have possibly done to deserve this? No, this wasn't that.
Well, the
No.
whole point is that she's had her kneecap sorted out. She had a fluxating patella, which meant that her tiny kneecap had come out of the tiny groove where it should have been kept safe. So, as a result, she has to have this bucket so she doesn't lick it. Now, the interesting thing is that is the natural thing for a dog to do, to lick a wound to make it better.
Right.
But the vet knows that if she does that, she could bring bacteria into the wound, which could completely destroy the value of the operation and actually
Dogs
mean
have
that.
a lot of bacteria in their mouths.
Yeah, exactly. But she doesn't know that. So as far as she is concerned, she's totally bewildered by this experience. She can't do the thing that comes naturally to her. And people who she thought loved her keep shoving this plastic thing on her head and just won't do anything about it. And as far as she's concerned, why don't we just take the bucket off? And I don't know, it did make me think a bit, Adrian. You know, I know there's been times in my life when I've said to God, why don't you just take the bucket off? Why don't you remove the thing that is driving me crazy, or that is upsetting me, or that is preventing me from doing the thing that comes naturally to me that I can see is a good idea? Why don't you just do it? I don't know whether that
Do you
sounds...
mean that he's actually doing something really useful for you?
Well, of course. Of
what
course.
you
I
were
mean,
saying?
just
Yeah.
like we know that Gracie needs this bucket on her head, and then she's going to needs at the moment to be in a cage, so she can't use this leg. And we know, because we own this puppy, that that's the right thing. And you know, there was a moment when I said to the vet, oh, well, you don't know our dog. And he had that expression, and I could suddenly see he was thinking, no, I don't know your dog, but I do know dogs. I know what dogs do. And I don't know. I thought, I can't explain to her. I cannot explain to her, but I know this is for her good. And I thought of the number of times that Jesus must have thought, you're speaking a different language to me. You know what you think is the right thing to do and the best thing to do and the way to do it in your human way. And I can't explain to you that what I'm doing is far more important for your ultimate health.
Yeah.
I can't explain it.
Yes, well, we were talking, weren't we, about bigger pictures and smaller pictures and all that. I wonder sometimes why he didn't explain more, to be honest, but there we are. I'll chat with him about that.
He did, though, didn't he? It's just that how could they possibly
They couldn't understand
really what he was talking about. I mean, they had glimpses like the Transfiguration. They saw moments when he was clearly beyond norm. But then he was sitting, laughing, talking, eating fish with them, and back to earth in all ways. I don't think they could have understood. I get a bit fed up with hearing about the thick disciples. I'm sure I wouldn't have understood.
Well, we don't exactly understand now, do we? I mean, I don't know why we're to talk about the disciples like that. Do you think Jesus had much small talk? I like the thought of him sitting around.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I like the idea of that very much.
I well, maybe not small talk, but I think they would have laughed together. Of course they would.
Yeah,
I'm sure they did.
Those would have been the things that he was so sad about losing.
Yeah,
wouldn't they?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. That was a great problem for Jesus and for the disciples. There he is doing crazy, dangerous, ultimately, apparently fatal things. Why? Why would you do that? And Peter tried to stop him, as I'm always going on and on about that, but he did. But was it because he knew, Jesus knew there was, and this, I cannot imagine anything more important than this, if it's true, and some people will say it isn't. I think it is, that he knew there was an ultimate safety available for us.
But only if.
Eventually. But the way to it, the path to it. And again, don't ask me to explain this because I haven't got the faintest idea what the logic of it is. The path to it was going to involve abandonment by his father on the cross when he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? And by the disciples. And a tortuous, horrible death. And as he was both man and God, the part of him that was man would have been looking aghast at the things that he was doing. So eventually he's saying to his father, is there any chance I could just not do this?
Even as you were saying it, Adrian, I was thinking, it doesn't fit really with anything to do with Gracie, but I was thinking about, Jesus saying so sadly, it's really hard for a rich man. Because it's like, to pass through the eye of a needle. And in a way, that's what he had to do, wasn't it? He had to abandon all the obvious richness of being able to do miracles, being able to make people better, his friendships with the disciples, his teaching them what really mattered about the kingdom here on earth. And he had to leave all that, all those riches, to go through this tiny, as you say, this narrow, tortuous path because, as you say, we'll never understand it really, but it was the only way.
And there must have been an element of speculativeness, and what the word is, about that, to walk into it, not quite knowing how it would end.
There must have been, I think, I agree with you. Otherwise, the unbelievable despair that he experienced in Gethsemane, he would have been perhaps, I don't know. We don't know, do we really?
So maybe all that leads to a question we've asked before, and that I ask myself a lot, and it is, what kind of safety do I want? What kind of safety do I want? Do I want a safety that will last until I get too ill to live and I die, or whatever, or anything temporary? Good things, nice things, comfortable things. Is that enough? Or do I want to know that there is an ultimate path to ultimate safety that might involve things that are not as easy to handle? We were always talking, aren't we, about how, during our lives together, we've sometimes bought things labelled universal.
It's like our universal car rack.
Our universal roof rack.
Roof rack. And it must have fitted every other car but ours.
Make of car except ours.
Yeah.
And
universal.
our friend Ken mentioned recently that he had something labelled Easy Fix, which clearly was not. And I truly, truly hate those things that say on the side, a child could assemble this, but it would have to be one of those children in that strange series on television where they're genius children. It would be one of them, I think. And what's the other one? Oh yes, easy to follow instructions inside. That way, which is the way of the West rather than the East, of having things fixed and sorted so that you know where you're going and what you're doing. That isn't the way of the Jesus following thing.
But it's a lie anyway, isn't it, really?
It's a lie anyway,
we've just had all these instructions about giving Gracie tablets, and we've Googled it, and we've followed the vet's instruction, and we've done everything, and we have succeeded. Don't get me wrong. She's had her antibiotics, but there is one tablet she's supposed to have that is minute. It's half of a minute tablet.
It's so tiny.
And she obviously hates it. Yeah. And we've tried everything, haven't we? And I think the worst moment was when we were so sure she'd taken it, and we'd put it in a little tiny bit of her favourite meat, and she'd taken it, and it was in her mouth, and she was chewing it, and then out of the bottom of this bucket came the tablet. She'd had all of the meat.
The trouble with that is it's like all our moments of triumph with Gracie, that we rejoice and we relax, and we suddenly see that we've lost and she's won. She's a remarkable dog.
But it's that same thing. We know she needs it. We know it's for her good. She doesn't know she needs it. She thinks she knows best. She's not going to have something that tastes horrid. She's going to get rid of it. Yeah. And in a way, maybe that's this quick fix safety. We think we know the best thing. And I don't know.
It made me remember, as you'll remember, a time when someone very dear to us had a very bad accident, and we went to the hospital, and he was on a trolley surrounded by doctors and nurses and all working busily on various parts of his body, and obviously he was very, very ill indeed. And I remember standing there and trying to think exactly like this, trying to think where the firm ground was, where could I stand where it would feel all right. And I remember going down through all the aspects of my life, and none of them held me, none of them. All the stuff I've done and the people I've known and the work we've done, all that stuff, I just went down and down and down. People will know how that feels. And interestingly, and I think some people might be surprised in a way to hear this, I landed on a little ledge that stopped my descent. And it was something to do with Jesus dying for me. And it was so unlooked for at that point. Probably should have been, I don't know.
Oh, come on.
But anyway, that's where I landed. And it will be different for each of us, won't it?
Well,
that point.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about ledges. I think I was just clinging on by my fingertips to that ledge, that Jesus would somehow get this person through and us through. Now, in our situation, he did. But that doesn't always happen. And but that awareness that is the ultimate and most important thing. Yeah. I was thinking, Adrian, of another time when you felt unplugged, when you really felt you were swinging around, and that's when we went to Zambia. Do you remember? And we the very first person that we met, the area in Zambia was this little village, Zamtan, was riddled with AIDS, and we were there, weren't we, with World Vision to look and see what they were doing to support this village, which had its back against the wall. Talk about a pandemic. I mean, the central part, the adults were dying in droves. So there were the very elderly and there were the children. And I remember somebody saying the very fabric of Africa is being torn, which is what I think we can see in too many areas of the world,
right.
Really. And if you remember, we had this person brought out to us who was dying, and we were sitting on these silly little stools, weren't we?
Yeah.
And you had a very similar experience.
I did, really.
You?
And actually, it was just after we'd arrived at the hotel in Lusaka with our universal plug.
Oh, yes!
Our universal electric plug converter. And it turned out that the only place in the entire universe it didn't fit was Lusaka.
Well,
anyway,
that particular hotel, anyway.
There we were, sitting there. And, you know, we've sat in so many Bible study groups and church meetings and goodness knows what. And you kind of know where you are with it and where you're going. And I sat on this little rickety chair looking at this lady dying, going through terrible, terrible, terrible pain and suffering and heading for the grave. And I just didn't know where to plug in. I didn't know where to feel safe. And what came into my head, interestingly, was a bit from the book of James, which is a terrible book, as we all know. Full of practical things. And it said, true religion is looking after widows and orphans and staying clean.
Yes.
And
the reason I said that about that ledge is that I think sometimes that is all we can do, Adrian.
Well, I think those circumstances.
If you feel that the rope that's holding you with God is really fraying badly, there are still things that you can hold on to keep you safe, that are of God. And that is you just get on with the job of loving.
And sometimes that is the next thing, isn't it? The thing that is in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
Like at that time, we were supposed to be there to see what was happening, come back, help with it.
Yeah.
We weren't there to come up with some deep philosophical conclusion about it.
No.
So I did find that helpful.
But I suppose what I'm saying is that ledge, as you said, is different for each of us. Yeah. And certainly for sometimes you just have to hang on in, don't you? And in fact, I can think of many times when we've said to people who can't pray anymore, we're hanging on to you by a rope, we're holding on to you, and we are praying for you, so don't you worry at the moment, and there'll come a point where you'll be praying for us.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So look fiercely for your landing place, because it's important.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And it would be lovely to hear, of the ledges that you've landed on, that at moments where everything seems to be wobbling, you find a level of safety, either directly with God or in some other way, just to hold you there and keep you safe. Because that's what we all want, really, isn't it? Ultimately, a safety.
But a real one, a true one. Yeah.
Having said that, Adrian, I'd love to be sitting on a beach in Portugal just at the moment with a gin and tonic.
So hard luck. You can have a gin and tonic. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.